motorcycle racing was for me always the ultimate kick. I enjoyed this also much more than racing cars. We didn't have at this time also all those electronic aids you had at this time. It was really your right hand was controlling the rear wheel and, also was braking, no ABS, no nothing. So it's fine honing to operate a motorcycle in this extreme, small area which is left where you either fly off it and make it, So, and that's was always the kick for me.
Welcome to the Janus Motorcycles podcast. Our kind of motorcycling is different from what you see from big brands and big bikes. We manufacture classic, simple, small displacement motorcycles because that's what we like to ride. And we're not alone. On this podcast, we talk with some of the smartest and most interesting people we know in motorcycling, design, and manufacturing. We're glad you're here. Welcome to the Janus Motorcycles podcast, Why We Ride. And I'm really happy today to be joined by Matthias Schaub. Matthias is a German-born motorcycle racer, former aircraft engineer, and owner of Spiegler Performance Parts, the premier U.S. brake line manufacturer for motorcycle and automotive racing applications. And maybe more. You can explain that, Matthias, as we get along. Sure. Janus' first model, the Halcyon 50, used old-fashioned drum brakes, front and back, which were operated by cables. But when we launched the 250 line in early 2016, we made the choice to move to modern disc brakes. In our search for the best brake lines available, we were delighted to find Spiegler, which is located around 3.5 hours from our Goshen, Indiana shop. On top of the high quality of Matthias products, one of the things that made the choice to source our brake lines from Spiegler even easier was the incredible speed with which they could complete and turn around small orders, in many cases just a couple of days. Since then, every Janus model has featured Spiegler's braided stainless brake lines, front and back. It's been a pleasure working with Matthias over the years as we develop and launch new products and continue with our staples. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. Willkommen, Matthias.
Thank you so much, Richard. Welcome, yes.
When we were preparing for this, I asked you if you had any bios you wanted to share or anything, and you sent me what was that from? What magazine?
That is from the Road Racing World.
Road Racing, okay. And yes. It was a wonderful write-up. And right in the first paragraph, it mentioned that you, and this isn't unusual, especially for Europeans, but is that you got started on mopeds, which immediately we had a connection because that's my start, which is less common here in the States. Most people just jump right to a 1200cc motorcycle without anything in between. But I got started on you said maybe smaller than 50cc, but I got started on a 50cc.
50cc,
it was a 50.
Actually. It's called a Mofa, actually, in Germany, and it's by law regulated to 25 kilometers per hour. But you could ride this as a 15-year-old one. So, normally my bicycle was my get around. And of course, when I saw those little Mofas, and I thought, oh, that's great, an engine. I got one of those, and it was very funny. It was highly tuned. So to give you an idea, 25 kilometers is just 15, miles per hour. So a good bicycle is passing you.
Yeah.
But the previous owner had already put his hands into it, and it ran around about 60 kilometers per hour.
Okay.
40 miles per hour. And I had to get it. And it was a lot of fun. The police was chasing me, so I always tried to get away,
So what was you spell that? What was the word you said?
Mofa. It's an M-O-F as in Frank, A.
Mofa. And what does that stand for? What does that mean?
Like mobilized bicycle, or motorized bicycle. So, Mo is for motor, Fahr is for Fahrrad, bicycle. Yeah.
Okay. So kind of like moped, which in English would be motor pedals. Interesting.
And you didn't need a driver's license for that. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's here in the States. I've been in the process for a while of rebuilding a vintage moped for my daughter.
Yes.
And I started it when she was 15, and she's now 18 or just turned 18. So she didn't get to take advantage of it at that age, but you can without a license at 15. So maybe the next daughter will get it to be able to ride it around. But that's the background of Janus. That's how we started this, was appreciating the kind of like just goofy fun that you can have on a lightweight bike, where you don't have to take yourself too seriously. You're not gonna, well, you can get yourself hurt pretty badly, but not like you would on a 750 or a 1000cc sport bike. So, well, that's interesting. So do you have any fun stories from that time period?
Yeah, my brother, so you were also, of course, it was a single seater. It's like a bicycle, basically. It was a super bicycle with a motor. And so he was sitting on the back, and we are just, and the police came by and turned around chasing us. And so we went, we tried to get away. I got away. My brother didn't. So he had to jump off, and they caught him. So he got busted, not me.
Great. That's how you want it to go down. Yeah. So I mentioned in the kind of in your brief introduction that you worked as an airplane engineer. I didn't go into how you did that and the companies you worked for. Tell us a little bit about how you got started in that.
So it's basically in Germany, they have this system that you can make a high school degree. That means 12th or 13th grade. You can have a middle school degree. And then you do, that's what I did actually. And so after 10 years, you are done with school, and then you do an apprenticeship for 3 or 3.5 years. And I did this with German airliner Lufthansa as an airframe mechanic. And you're around about 2/3 on the job site. And Lufthansa is training you also on all those special fasteners and on welding, machining, like milling and a lathe. You learn really everything. And 1/3 you spend also in school. And every half year you have to, and it's a trade school, so where you will learn specific things for your job related. And so every half year you had to pass tests and after 3.5 years, you take your degree, become a journeyman. And then you can either join, be an airframe mechanic, or there's another way how you can make your high school degree or your degree, which enables you to go to the university. Yeah. You go to school again. That's what I did. And then I went for school, to school for mechanical engineering. So, and that's, and after this, I started with Airbus, the German, aircraft manufacturer to Boeing, and worked there for almost 10 years. Yeah.
And in that capacity, what were you doing?
Yeah, the last thing I did was, I was a specialist for tooling. So it's called NRC, non-recurring costs, where you evaluate for new projects. Like the last project I did was the Airbus A380, this huge double deck plane. And we were evaluating what it costs, basically, Airbus to build this plane, all the tooling costs. So tooling includes, the assembly jigs. It includes also like the CNC machining. So everything you really need for tooling to build a plane like this. It was a very interesting job. I was traveling a lot, and also in Europe, and like to France, to Toulouse, where the headquarters from Airbus is, for negotiating budgets. And it was a good job. It was a fun job too. And
when I read a little bit about NRC or non-recurring costs, I was just thinking, we do a lot of that, but it's the stakes are not as high as on a massive airplane, and I'm sure the costs are nowhere near what they are. But we do a lot of work with our tooling, and it's interesting to think about just the how you do decide how much you can spend on the tooling, which that's a cost that doesn't even get factored into the operating, the bill of material or the how much it costs to make the airplane.
It's development costs. It's one interesting thing was always the bigger the numbers were, the less resistance you get from other people. So,
Really?
it's basically like, see in this way, the smaller things are, so everybody can build an opinion on this. So if you evaluate just one tool, people get an easier idea what this really costs. The bigger the numbers are, the less people understand that.
So they're just like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, not like this, but that's, that was one of the experiences I made. So that's, the bigger the number,
Interesting.
So.
That's very interesting. Huh. So we talked a little bit about, your work with Airbus and that NRC. Somehow along the path while you were doing this, you were also getting interested in your motorcycles, or stepping up from that moped. Tell us a little bit about that.
So that moped I ran only for 1 year, and then I got I made a license. So with 16 you were eligible to run another updated moped, basically also 50 cc's, but that thing went around about 100 kilometers per hour, so around about like 65, 70 miles per hour. So you could float in traffic. And the funny thing is, with the regulations are with 16, you can run a little 50 cc, but you cannot, a little motorcycle, but you cannot make a driver's license for a car. So I always wondered why they let young people ride a motorcycle, with no experience, basically. Instead of also giving them the opportunity to get around and make a car driver's license, which is safer. Like here, you can maybe run just with one passenger or so.
Right.
Yeah. So, nevertheless. So with 18, I couldn't wait. I made my driver's license for, unlimited horsepower CCs. That has all changed, in the last years.
Is it even more tiered now?
Yeah, it's tier 2. So you cannot run a motorcycle with 150 horsepower when you're turning 18. I don't know what the regulations.
Probably not a bad thing.
Yeah. Okay. When I made my rider's license, horsepower where just 100 was the max I knew. I think the Honda CBX 1000 or Kawasaki Z1300, that were the biggest bikes out there, all gold rank, and they barely make 100 horsepower. So
I got a chance to ride the new Kawasaki H2 a couple of years ago, and
it's a supercharger.
A supercharger, 230 horsepower or something crazy. It's just unbelievable. Very rideable though, but that was wild. I never would be able to use a fraction of it with my abilities, or with the roads that are around.
Yeah.
So then you also got into racing, and the name LeMans came up. What happened there?
LeMans, so I just became an international. I just got the international license. You had to go through you have to qualify for this. So I ran the national championship for 2 years, and after
in Germany.
In Germany, yes. And on a TZ350, so there's a lightweight motorcycle again, which was a blast at this time. And I mean, it was such a great experience also to run something so light and nimble. It had around about 80 horsepower, like maybe 220 pounds or so. It was just amazing. It was a lot of fun. Nevertheless, I made my got my international license. Local leadership who ran in the endurance world championship, and contact me if I would like to ride for them. So I decided, that's great. Before I got into racing, I always traveled through Europe, like to Francorchamps in Belgium, or to Le Mans, to watch those 24-hour races, and I thought it was the greatest thing ever. So I got my license, and we went to Le Mans, and we tried to prepare those motorcycles so good as we could. But there was a lot to be desired with those bikes. So we did
endurance racing. You have to. It's not just that it can go fast; it has to go fast for longer than any other race in the world.
And we had some aftermarket brakes on which I have never heard this name before. Some German manufacturers, and they were horrible. So we.
So right from the beginning, you were you were frustrated with the quality.
Yes, and so we didn't qualify. I think we missed it by a second, and so
Yeah.
we watched the race and then we went back home.
So a lot of people, when they hear Le Mans, they think cars, and they think of these kind of classic, the fishtail Porsches, and then maybe more recently the Mercedes and stuff like that, Audis. What is endurance racing for motorcycles similar?
Oh yeah, it's huge in France too. So especially France, it's like
The Ball d'Or.
main anyhow that endurance racing, and it was Miguel Duhamel actually was running. That was in '89, I think. He was running for the Honda factory team.
Mm-hmm.
And interesting thing, that was the only bike which didn't start.
Oh no!
I was standing right behind it, took some pictures, and he was just hitting the starter, the electric starter, and the bike would not start. Everybody took off, and me was still standing there.
Oh no!
They got it running then. But it's a big thing in France, and that is also a big event in Le Mans. It was also Le Castellet was there too, and it's just huge. I mean, I would say it's almost as huge as the car event.
Wow.
Here
in the States, that is just not a sport that we're familiar with at all. And probably people like Walt Siegel and some of his
I know Walt very well.
some of his custom builds, like they're the kind of the Ball d'Or type endurance racers. Personally, I think it's one of the most beautiful expressions of the racing motorcycle. They have these big fairings, and especially maybe when you were doing it, the dual headlights.
We had dual headlights, no LEDs. It was fine. So
they're gorgeous. It's a very unique look, but
yes.
it's really neat. So, so what are it's just basic? You have 2 riders per team, or
we actually had 3 riders.
3, okay.
So but as I say, we tried to qualify. It was pretty cool. I mean, I did the night practice, and you're going down the front straight and
insane.
It is insane, and then and those lights at this time, the headlights, they were not so good as they are today. So
so you're just kind of barreling down it.
They illuminated only certain corners, but not everything. So you were in the dark.
So Le Mans is very famous, but the Nurburgring is also famous, and I hear you had some experience there.
Yeah, I before I took a little break from two-stroke racing. So in the early '90s, I was not racing, but I had a Yamaha ZR 1000, and I spent my summer vacations at the Nurburgring. So I just got an annual ticket, and just went down there, had a little bed and breakfast for 25 German marks.
So for folks here that maybe are listeners, tell us about what the Nurburgring is, and I don't even fully know how to pronounce the Nordschleife.
Nordschleife, yes. The Nordschleife is an older track. It was built in the 20s, I think, the Depression, to get some tourism, to get some people in the Eifel, that is this region. It's very isolated there normally. But I think by today, everybody really knows what the Nürburgring Nordschleife is. Yes. It became so popular. You see all those YouTube videos. It's like rush hour there in Chicago on that track.
Yeah, I see motorcycles on that, and I go, I would never be out there with all those cars.
When I was there in the early 90s, I had this track almost for myself. During the week, it was barely anybody.
Mm-hmm.
The weekend, you had some more people there, but still not like it as it is.
But what a great way to train for racing, because can you ever? I mean, I'm sure there are people who memorize that course, but hundreds of corners, and it's almost 13 miles long. It's
it's very unsafe for motorcycle riders, So the guardrails are left and right. There is no runoff zone.
Yeah,
it's very unforgiving.
So. Yeah. So you still did some more endurance racing before you...
Yes, there's a German, in Germany, there was an organization comparable here like to Vera, Western Eastern Racing Association. And that was called, how was it called? I have lost the name now. But this organization, it was just great. They were very well organized, and they had the timing system like they have today already in the 90s there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did a lot of endurance racing there, and like 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, and one also a 24-hour race in Magny-Cours in France again.
Mm-hmm.
And that was great racing. And the riders were also involved in this organization as, corner workers, for instance. So,
Oh yeah.
and yeah, it was great. It was
So a real community
a lot
of
of fun.
people. Yeah. Well, what was it about that racing that really that got you interested and that kept you interested?
It's just the competition. I just like, to go fast, and and track days were nice, but you don't get the kick like this, like you do when you go racing. Racing is just, yeah. Sorry.
Have you ever raced a car?
Yeah, actually, Paris Prastana said, in age get a cage. So I I like the saying. And when I turned 50, I stopped racing motorcycles. And later on, I got a BMW M3 and one E36. It was already built as a race car. I added a few things to make it a real race car. And got a racer's license. And I'm racing with NASA, which I still do today. And have a lot of fun. I race cars now for 4 years. And it's
is there anything different between that you like more about the motorcycles, or?
Yeah, it doesn't hurt so much when you fall off,
But I guess what I'm getting at is there something about the motorcycle racing that really draws you to it, or is it really just that competitive?
No, motorcycle racing was for me always the ultimate kick, and it's still so. I mean, it was for me. I think I enjoyed this also much more than racing cars. It's just that we didn't have at this time also all those electronic aids you had at this time. It was really your right hand, which was controlling the rear wheel, and also was braking, no ABS, no nothing. So it's this fine honing to operate, a motorcycle in this extreme, small area which is left, where you either fly off it and make it, so. And that's was always the kick for me. And
I think that's. Sorry, go ahead.
I met so many good people there, made so many good friends. This is also how my whole business started, due to racing. So
yeah, I think a lot of people. I mean, that nature of the way that a motorcycle puts you you really are, whether you like it or not, when you get on something with two wheels and there's no, as you said, cage around you.
Yeah.
Even if you're riding to work, which some racers say is more dangerous than on the track. Even if you're riding to work, you are able to get yourself in that moment of sort of liminal, right on the edge of.
Right on the edge, yes.
Of something, and you're so in control of what's going on, or of what you're capable of controlling of what's going on. So I think that kind of carries over even to people on the street. That's interesting. So at some point here, you moved to the States. How did that happen?
Yeah, that's so. Still working for Airbus, I became good friends with one of the daughters who owned this company, which brought me over here. So we became just friends, and we had a great time riding motorcycles together, going out in Hamburg, partying. We were young, and Hamburg is a great city. It's very international. It's a big city too. So it's without the suburbs, almost 2 million people. So nightlife is big there. So, and we became really good friends. And they had facilities in China, in the US, in Spain, all over the world. And they were looking for someone to run their warehouse and workshop operations here in Dayton, Ohio. So one day, that was in 1997, they asked me if I would like to work for them in Dayton, Ohio. And I said, where? And I have heard about the Yugoslavia peace accord about Dayton. So I checked it out. And yeah, they flew me over here, first class, ever. That was the only time I ever flew first class. And yeah, and then Airbus had sent me actually the year before for a training class to Santa Monica in LA, a little bit different than Dayton. But what I immediately recognizes the friendliness here of the people, and what a great country it is.
Mhm.
So on that, I said, I do this. I gave up my good job at Airbus. I have nothing to lose. I was not married. I said bye-bye to my girlfriend at this time. And so I did this, and I never looked back. It was a great decision. So.
And so what were you, that warehouse kind of job you were taking?
Yeah, I was basically
that?
the vice president operations. So I had my team there in the warehouse, and but things didn't work out. And didn't get along with my boss here. And at this time, Lothar Spiegler, this is where the name Spiegler comes from, who I was racing with in Europe, and I know him very well, and asked me how to get with his products, stainless steel braided brake lines, onto the US market. And this is how this all started. So, and I told him, and Lothar, you're calling right in time. Things are not working out so well here for me. I need to do something else. And so we started Spiegler in April 2020. No, 2000, sorry. April 2000.
2000. Yeah. Interesting. And so Spiegler started off with just brake lines. Is that the?
That's correct. Yes.
So tell our listeners a little bit about just what the benefits. Well, first of all, just really briefly about what a hydraulic disc brake system does, and then what the benefit of a braided stainless line is.
Yeah. At this time, most manufacturers, including also BMW, manufactured their motorcycles with rubber lines, and the stainless steel braided lines have the advantage, under pressure they don't expand in this way as a rubber brake line does.
Mm-hmm.
And also the stainless steel gives you also a longer lifetime because it's just more resistant against UV light. Like rubber, everything, this from your tires on your car or whatsoever, it will crack after a certain time. So that is the advantage about stainless steel braiding lines. And then, of course, the customizing we can do. People, here for comfort, add higher handlebars to it. So now the brake lines, throttle lines, whatsoever, all that stuff is too short.
Mm-hmm.
So we can, make longer brake lines, and which we still do this, customizing a lot. And that's basically the main advantages. And it's also lighter, even though weight is not such a big issue, It's,
Yeah. So like our first model, I mentioned the 50 used drum brakes, which are really antiquated technology where it's literally just a shoe rubbing against the hub or some sort of part of the hub to slow it down. Whereas on a disc brake system, you have this big disc on the side, and the caliper will grab that, and still using friction slows the bike down. And these brake lines go from the master cylinder, which is typically, let's say, on the front brake of a motorcycle, located on the handlebar, or on your car, it's the same way. It's a master cylinder. Then it goes down to the slave cylinder, which we typically call the caliper. And it's the part between that we're talking about.
yes.
And if there's, people talk about brake feel, and if there's any play in that brake line, if it's able to expand, then you're going to feel that at the handlebar or at the brake lever. It's going to feel a little bit squishier than it would.
Does. Yes.
Yeah.
It does. So you get a better feel for the brake, and especially, it's really a difference. And when you have a much better feel in your hand and your fingers when you activate the brake. So, better feel basically means also better stopping power. On a car, you have in there also brake booster, which really make that brake pretty numb. So, but as a motorcycle rider, you're right on it with your hand or your foot. There's no brake booster in between. Let's disregard those few BMW models which came out with a brake booster. They discontinued this. So it's really a better feel, more safety, and it's just an improvement over the normal rubber lines,
Yeah. And on a bike like our little 250s or our 450, they're still very, very, very low horsepower. some people are like, well, why do you use braided stainless on that? And I think you've really answered that, which it's the feel and it's the durability. It's going to last a lot longer than a rubber line, and it also helps us cut the weight down.
Yes, and we warranty also our lines also for the lifetime of the motorcycle, and we have we know from one specific manufacturer where they really have problems with every bike which was manufactured from 98 to 2004 with their rubber brake lines, and we get those calls every day. The lines are bursting, starting leaking, disintegrate, and it's a safety issue.
Yeah, really one of the worst safety issues on a motorcycle is if your brakes go out, that's just not a good thing. So, what is it like? There are other manufacturers that make braided stainless lines in motorcycle. Like many models, you can still get a low budget bike that has rubber lines, but what sets Spiegler apart?
What sets us apart, all our components are made in Europe, mostly in Germany and in Switzerland. So it starts already there with the ISO certificated material they're using. So you really know where like a fitting badge is coming from the material. It's all, made to those standards. And it's tested. And we test our lines also. We have we have 3 in-house test stands, and which I had specifically built for this purpose. One is a so-called whip test, where you spin the brake line like with 800 RPM for 35 hours non-stop. It's the toughest test ever, we have a pressure test where we can pressurize, the pump is making almost 20,000 PSI, which is not relevant for brake line because, the FMVSS pedal Moto Vehicle Safety Standard 106.
I know all about it.
Yeah, I bet you do. Requires 4,000 PSI, and then you have to pump it up to 5,000 PSI and hold it for a minute or 5 minutes. So that's we test all this, and our brake lines, if we use compression fittings, we can go up without problems to 15,000, 16,000 PSI. There's nothing starts leaking. If you use banjo fittings, the crush washers, they will not hold up that pressure, so they will blow out. That's too much for them.
But the brake line won't.
But consider if you pull maybe with both hands on the brake lever, maximum you get out of this is maybe 1,000 PSI. That's it, So that's it's a safe thing. Then we have also so-called stretch test, where you really pull the brake lines on both ends. You run that test, needs to run like 1 inch per minute, and you pull, and it cannot separate before you reach like 320 pounds. And our lines, they go far over this and will not separate. So
I read something about you suspending one of your motorcycles by a brake line.
Yeah, we had a shop bike, was a Suzuki S3 1000S. So we took a fork truck and hang this whole thing up on the brake line. And there's also a picture on our webpage and the catalog. So when we had it hanging there, and was holding up. His bike was like 450 pounds or so.
Yeah. So some of these tests that you personally kind of designed these, is that something that you brought in from your experience in the aircraft industry, or where did you bring that?
The tests actually are, it's a requirement by the FMVSS 106.
I guess I mean the equipment.
The equipment, actually, I had those designed and built here in Dayton. So, Dayton is a good location, and the people from LA or San Francisco might not say that, but that's okay.
We have that conversation all the time where it's like, well, we have this incredible manufacturing base, especially where we are.
Dayton once had the most tool shops per capita in the US. Now with the automotive industry stepping back, also GM closing its doors here in Moraine, that has, got less and less, but we still have a lot of tool shops here and very capable people. And we still have also the big Air Force base here, of course. So there are a lot of good people around here, and a good pool where you can, source, get ideas how to build this. So we were developing this together, how to do this. So
yeah, that was actually one of my questions for you, is why did you stay in Dayton? Like, there's lots of places you can go, and you obviously bring in some components from Europe Like,
yes, we bring a lot of other stuff from Europe in, and it's a good location being on the East Coast or kind of close to the East Coast, dealing with Europe. So if you have to make a phone call, which is not such a big deal anymore, but you're 6 hours just away from Europe. But you also get a lot of people here. You reach a lot of people in this area. So from Dayton, we get with 2 day shipping, I think we get like 80%, 90% of the population in the US, so. And that's, if you're on the West Coast, which I like, don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit different there. Also, one thing to consider is always here, very, very reasonable prices of living here.
Cost of living.
So cost of living here is very reasonable, and it's also, traffic is not so. I like convenience meanwhile too. The older you get, you become a little creature, convenience.
Yeah, no, that's you're really echoing exactly the kind of, when people ask me that question, I'm just like, the cost of living, if you factor that in, I can fly to LA or wherever and just factor it in, because my cost of living is so much lower here in the Midwest. And you mentioned it right away when you even just talking about the States, but I think that probably was influenced by the fact that you were in getting out in the Midwest kind of area where people are, there's a friendliness and an openness.
Friendliness here. And now, meanwhile, I got also married here, so my wife is.
Oh, okay. So you married an American.
Yes, she's American. I'm American too. I have 2 passports. So
okay, well, great. Yeah.
The American passport.
Wonderful.
Which I really enjoy. Actually, my German passport is expired, and it doesn't bother me at all.
Well, we kind of jumped around a little bit, but I did want to ask, in terms of the testing you did, how does that compare to let's say competitor manufacturers?
I really cannot say this. I don't know what they are doing. If they have those test apparatuses we have, I don't know. So, and it's, for me, was coming out of the aircraft industry, the approach was always, deliver the highest and best quality you have. It's not only the testing, it's also when we make our brake lines, it's, we have, like in the aircraft industry, we have little stamps where the people have to stamp on actually the order sheet or the invoice, and they have to stamp out also the package. You will see on every of our packages, or when you receive the brake lines from us, we have labels on there. You see mostly 2 stamps on there.
Mm-hmm.
The left one is always from the person who made it. The right one is the second person who is checking this, independent from the person who made it. Because the most crucial thing with the brake line is, don't forget to crimp the ends on it. And yes, that can happen. We are all human beings, and even though we have here strict regulations that nobody is to be disturbed when they are working at those 60, 80 ton crimpers. You don't want to put your hands in there either. So, but we are all human beings, and we make mistakes. That can happen. That's why we have this dual quality control, and that works for us very well. That's
really well. You certainly don't.
Quality.
Yeah, I certainly just don't. I don't see other manufacturers really advertising so much how they test their things. You're just so open about it, and that really was a big factor, along with time frame, willing to work with a small. Because when we first, still to this day, we're a small manufacturer, but you do work with individual custom applications as well. Was a big part of it.
Absolutely. And we appreciate this. We are also not a big corporation either. We are a small business too. It's that's yeah.
So speaking of that, what you make brake lines. What else? I know that we've talked about getting some switches in from you, other parts. I know you carry Moto Gadget, I believe.
Yeah, Moto Gadget is another German manufacturer, and we import and distribute this here exclusively in the United States. And that's it's just a very premium. It's a premium product. They make those switches. They make also a digital control box called the Mo Unit Blue, where you have an app for your phone, actually, where you can just see, you can actually switch the ignition on, was sitting maybe somewhere, and the bike will light up, and you still have to start it by hand, so safety feature. But it's yeah, they came out with glassless mirrors, so they machine the mirrors, very high precision machine, and then plasma coat them, convex surface, and they're really very thin. They're just like 2-3 millimeters thick, and it's glassless, so it cannot break. And yeah, they make some very, very innovative products, which are unique, and nobody else has here.
Yeah, I mean, if you're familiar, yeah, if you're familiar with some of the custom bikes that come out of shops like Revival Cycles, like top of the line, I don't know if Max Hazan uses it, but they're all running Moto Gadget.
Yes, Revival is one of our very good customers.
Yeah, and they're just so elegant. The instrumentation and the way the switch, they don't have a whole bunch of, well, there's minimal plastic. It's just really nice.
Very nice. And we're very glad to have them as a customer. It's a great relationship too. It's great people, really. Yeah. Yeah.
So if anybody's watching, the Revival bikes are always fun to look at. I follow them religiously. It's pretty neat. Any other products than that you carry? Or?
Yeah, we know for brakes, we have brake pads, and they are made actually in Paris, France. One of the last manufacturers in Europe who makes sintered metal brake pads. Everything else has been going more east. And so a very good quality product with the German TOV approval. And they also have now this ECE 90, which is a new regulation in Europe. So as an aftermarket brake pad manufacturer, your products need to be minimum as good as the OE equipment, if not better. So because they had so many issues there with brake pads coming from the Far East, which just were, let's say, junk. So people, had problems with those brake pads. And so the EU actually came up with this law. You have now those brake pads. Otherwise, you use basically your registration for your bike. In Germany, it's very, very strict.
Yeah.
And I have too many regulations, I think so. But so it's a very well-made brake pad, smack in the middle of Paris. No, it's a suburb from Paris, but it's in Paris, so it's pretty amazing. Great facility. Then we have another German manufacturer. It's called Kellerman. They make turn signals. They were one of the first who came out with LED and halogen turn signals. And then we have another, we have for customizing, we have another brand also out of Germany. It's called Wunderkind Custom. They make really nice parts for like the Indian motorcycles, like the Scout Bobber or for Triumph Bobber. Bikes like this, where you have some nice bolt-on parts and customize them. So
that's amazing. That's really neat. What are the plans ahead for Spiegler? Are you going to continue branching out into other products, or what's the future look like?
Yeah, actually, we're always looking for some new products, but our approach is here to improve everything we do here to an even higher standard, so that we do a better job on brake lines and get maybe new customers. So we split out also in the automotive section. So we make meanwhile a lot of automotive brake lines, mostly for go fast cars like Porsche, BMW, Corvette, Subaru's WRX, stuff like this. And we're working there very closely together with Essex Parts Service out of North Carolina. They're actually our exclusive distributor, and they do just a fantastic job. And it's so that's has taken on more and more too. So we are busy with that too.
That's interesting. So what has been the trajectory? When you got started, I'm sure starting Spiegler, having started a company, and still I consider what we're doing starting. I'm sure that was a lot of work. How has that kind of changed over the years?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about starting Spiegler, what that was like.
Yeah, it was a lot of hours. So, I was still working for that German company here, and I started Spiegler basically on the side. I immediately had an employee, then I had 2 employees, 3 employees. So I was still working for this German company. And from 8 to
Two or
5,
three employees at Spiegler.
I mean,
2 or 3 employees at
yes,
Spiegler.
at this time, yes. And so they could do the day-to-day business. And when I finished work at this German company, after 5 o'clock, I ran or drove straight over to Spiegler and worked there until midnight or longer, whatever it took. And I did this for years until, I received my green card. And then I quit my job.
So I'm assuming you were not married at this point.
I was not married at this point. No, I was not. No. No, there was no time for that. Not so much.
I believe it. That sounds like a really hard one. That's great. And what today? What is your day look like?
Yeah, today, I take the freedom. I'm not starting at 8 anymore, if possible. I mean, I do this. So mostly, I start at 9 here until 6. Work sometimes also on the weekends, but not too much. And I try to take my time also to enjoy life. And I have my dad in Germany owned his own business, and he was just working every day. It didn't matter if it was Christmas, if it was New Year, and he was just working those long hours. And he had a hotel, he had a cafe, and so that was a tough job. And he never, took his time later on in life to enjoy this maybe a little bit more. What he did, to harvest what he planted. And yeah, I didn't want to do this way. I, also with my wife, we like to travel. So I take a little bit more time off, and in today's time, with Wi-Fi or, computer, cell phones, you can, you can work also on vacation, what I do also. So I order from our, European suppliers. I do this, when I'm on vacation. When I can do this, and banking stuff and all this you can do, and payroll, that can be all managed if you're on the road.
Yeah, so taking a little more time these days.
Yes, I do.
Do you still ride off track?
No, actually, barely. It's riding motorcycles. I was always, when I ride motorcycles on the street, normal traffic, I'm always have my safety gear all on. And I lost a little bit the desire to have at 90 degrees, my leather jacket on, helmet and all this. And it's as I say, we're becoming a creature of comfort.
But it's good to hear that you'd rather not ride than ride without gear.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then one thing also, which is, one dangerous thing, I think today is a cell phone. It's so many people just don't pay attention. I mean, I see this every day, how they're, in front of me driving, and they're just swerving from left to right because they're busy playing with their cell phone. And unfortunately, that's also contributing to, that I'm not riding so much anymore. It's just not that I'm afraid of this, it's more just,
Yeah. Well, I mean, once again, we get back to the fact that the motorcycle, you really are on the cutting edge of, well, not the cutting edge is a wrong connotation, but you're on the limits of your control. And sometimes, your control, things happen to you that are not in your control. And that's just like that. Some kid or something looking at the text on their phone, or any age that these days swerves out of the lane or something like that. That's something you have to confront. And I don't get morbid about it. I like to ride on the road, and I accept it, as many riders do. But it is something like, once again, the motorcycle it's like pointing this out to you. When you ride a bike, you're really aware of people. I mean, when I drive a car and I see somebody texting, I'm just like, how can you be doing that? I could be riding, or there's a biker up there. So it reminds us, I think, about living in the moment and being, well, not just taking risk, but being alert all the time.
I had little story. I got a new pickup truck, so Ford F-350, brand new. I had it for 3 days. I got T-boned on a 4-way stop sign. So I stopped, looked left and right, took off, and I thought the other person coming on the left, still far away, is stopping. She did not. So she lives there. And she didn't admit that she was on the cell phone, but I'm pretty sure she was on the cell phone. And she lifted the whole truck. I thought I'm flipping this truck. Yeah, she hit me between the two wheels. So, and the whole truck got spun around like 190 degrees. Yeah. And I thought I'm flipping over. She flips me over. And she was a little sedan. So she
must have been moving.
Windshield up underneath my,
oh my goodness,
rocker panel from the pickup. I had a little kid in the back. Yeah. So that's, one thing. So, if I would have been in a small car on a motorcycle, I would be dead.
Different story. Yeah. Do you ride on the track still? I think I hear you do.
No, it's, the car racing has taken too much over. I race like 20 races a year. So there are always 3 races at the weekend. So I do this and it keeps me pretty busy. Also preparing the car and, that's I get my adrenaline rush there.
Yeah. It's and it's maybe a bit of more of an older man's sport in the sense that you can get into motorcycle racing pretty cheap, but
yeah,
you need a little more funds to get into cars.
Yes. Whereas the older you get, the more difficult it is to get into the roll cage there.
Right. Well, I guess that's answered most of my questions. It's been so great to learn more about Spiegler, but also just to get a chance to hang out with you a little more. I think have you made it by our shop once?
Yes, I stopped by. This was actually last year, I think so. But you were someone up there or in a meeting.
I think I was on vacation or something like that.
And so we checked out the front, and there was also the height of COVID, so we were all masked up, and we didn't want to, we just wanted to say hello. We were in Goshen, so it's pretty amazing. So, and
Well, wonderful. Well, I really hope you can make it back out again. We'd love to.
Oh,
I'd love to give you a tour and show you. We've just opened a fabrication shop about 5 minutes south of town where we're making all the 450 chassis.
Okay.
And actually, we're also making all the fenders for both model lines. We're starting to bring things in-house. Still all our Amish vendors and many vendors locally, but we'd love to have you out.
Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for spending time. Thanks for. I love getting to know everybody better. So
yeah, and I appreciate this. It was very enjoyable.
Well, I hope to be able to make it out to visit y'all sometime. It'd be really
very welcome. Yeah, all the time.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thanks so much, Matthias. It's been great talking.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.